staff. The only permanent injury he suffered was the loss of one ear. Now, since he wasn't physically impaired, he remained in the military, and eventually he became an admiral. However, during his career, he was, as you might suspect, somewhat sensitive about his appearance. Now, one day, the admiral was interviewing 2 Navy Master Chiefs and a Marine Sergeant Major for his personal staff. The first Master Chief was a surface Navy type, and it was a great interview. And so at the end of the interview, the admiral asked him, "Do you notice anything different about me?" The Master Chief turned a little bit red and answered, "Why, yes, sir, I couldn't help but notice you're missing your starboard ear. So I don't know whether this impacts your hearing on that side." Well, at this, the admiral got very angry at this lack of tact, and he threw him out of his office. The next candidate was an aviation Master Chief, and when asked the same question at the end of the interview, he answered, "Well, sir, you seem to be short one ear." And, of course, the admiral tossed him out also. The third interview was with the Marine Sergeant Major. He was articulate, he was extremely sharp, and he seemed to know more than the 2 Master Chiefs put together. Now, the admiral really wanted to hire this guy, but he went ahead with that same question. "Do you notice anything different about me?" To his surprise, the Sergeant Major said, "Yes, sir, you wear contact lenses." At this, the admiral was impressed and thought to himself, what an incredibly tactful Marine. And so he asked a follow-up question, "And how do you know that?" The Sergeant Major replied, "Well, sir, it's pretty hard to wear glasses with only one ear." We do have to phrase things correctly. So get the message right and get it phrased right. Our second responsibility is found in Yeshua's closing sermon to his followers. It's Matthew 24, 42 to 47. I'll just highlight a couple things in this text. He says, "Therefore keep watch, stay alert, because you don't know on what day, or in fact what hour, your Lord will come." Again, he goes on to say, "Who then is that faithful and wise servant whom the master has put in charge of his household? The one who fulfills his responsibilities. It will be good for that servant whose master finds him doing what is expected when he returns." In other words, friends, we are not to be going around looking for signs and counting days and hours and making predictions that are going to make us look foolish, so that we can retract the predictions and recalculate the days and the hours. We're supposed to be doing what God told us to be doing. Now, a major significance of Yeshua's ascension is that it guarantees his return, exactly as the prophets had predicted, with the attendant consequences for us. But there's another equally important implication of his ascension. It not only guarantees his return, it grants us his resources, because the ascension clearly established his sovereignty. In the text that we used in our Tefillat OhrChadash Rabbi this evening, it says, "He raised him from the dead." And listen carefully to what we said. "And seated him at his right hand in the heavenly realms, far above all rule and authority, power and dominion, above every title." So, in quoting Isaiah 45, verse 23, and you'll be reminded of this because it's part of the Elenu, the rabbi of old, Rav Shaul, goes on to say, "So God raised him to the very heights of heaven and gave him a name which is above every other name." And in Jewish tradition, name is important, remember? We refer to God as what, usually? Hashem. He's given the name above every other name, that at the name of Yeshua, every knee shall bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue will confess that Yeshua the Messiah is in fact Lord, to the glory of God the Father. The rabbi goes on to say, when he ascended, he led captive a host of captives. Ephesians 4. In getting to that point, He did something else. And when he describes that in that text, building on Psalm 68, he's describing when, notice the text says, when he ascended, the event we're celebrating. He's describing the victory march of the ancient days. And who are the prisoners of war here? The very spiritual forces that stand in his way. And this connects us then with our Haftorah passage for the evening, just to cite 2 verses. Jeremiah 16. O Lord, my strength. I'm sorry, not from this evening, from last week. O Lord, my strength and my fortress, my refuge in the day of trouble. Listen to this. Nations from around the world will come to you, saying, our fathers have been foolish, for they have worshipped other gods, these other spiritual forces, worthless idols. Can men make God? The gods they made up are not real gods at all. And when they come in that spirit, I will show them my power and might, and make them understand at last that I alone am God. This refers to the return of the Messiah in the fashion built on the victory he won. Goes on to say, Jeremiah 17, but our refuge is your throne, eternal, high and glorious. Lord, you alone can heal me. You alone can save us. My praises are for you alone. That's the kind of stuff that results as a result of his ascension and the victory in which he displayed over the spiritual forces that stood in opposition. Look, picture the scene if you would. Imagine all the forces of evil trying to keep Yeshua in the grave. And then imagine all the forces of evil trying to prevent him from ascending through their very sphere, so to speak. God's mighty power, as we recalled in our Tefillot HaChadash Rabbi, God's mighty power shattered those very forces as Yeshua rose and ascended through their very strongholds and fortresses. That was the victory march that is described. Their domain had been defeated, their dominance had been demolished, and therefore we can go in and live in light of that grand victory that was won for us. Friends, this is the time, the season, perhaps even the very weekend, certainly by Tuesday, of Yeshua's ascension. And it's appropriate for this time because of the several portions that precede us and that are for this evening. The scheduled readings, the story of the Jubilee year and what it pictured, ultimate redemption and restoration, Bemidbar, our wilderness journey through life, but also that honeymoon period that awaits his return as our bridegroom, in the words of John 14, and anticipated by tonight's Haftorah portion, where he talks about our betrothal, our engagement to him. And this event that we should be celebrating, it's important for us as Yeshua's followers because of its tremendous significance. It guarantees his return, as our Amida portions, both daily and weekly, remind us. He's the one who returns his presence to Zion. It guarantees his return to fulfill the Jubilee year pictures. As he left, exactly as he left, so he will return to the Mount of Olives and through the Golden Gate. Therefore, friends, this is a very Jewish concept and will fulfill the Jewish scriptures and the rabbinic insights. And it leaves us with important responsibilities to watch carefully, to be alert and ready, to wait on and utilize his power, the Spirit of God, the Ruach Hashem, as we share his message. It grants us his resources as well. Because you see, his ascension was a public demonstration of his conquest of the forces of evil. And so it gives us the same resources for power, or of power, that brought about his resurrection and ascension. That too is available to us, as we reminded ourselves earlier this evening. And it gives us his response to the question that's on our minds, or at least the minds of his followers on that day. What happened? Where did he go? Let me read from an article that expresses it well. It's called "The Day We Were Left Behind." Where he went was to heaven, which may not be up exactly as much as it is beyond. And what he went there to do was to finish what he had begun with us and for us. It was not enough. It was not enough that through him God was born into a human body. That was just his Christmas gift to us. His ascension gift was that through that human body, that through him, that human body returned to God. By presenting his own ruined, risen body to be seated at the place of supreme authority, Yeshua imported flesh and blood into those holy precincts for the very first time. He paved a way for us, so that when we arrive there later, everyone will not be quite so shocked by us. He restored the goodness of creation, and ours in particular. By ascending bodily into heaven, he showed us that flesh and blood are good, not bad. They are good enough for Yeshua. They're good enough for heaven. They're good enough for God. And by putting them on, talking about flesh and blood, and keeping them on, Yeshua has not only brought God to us, he has brought us back to God. Isn't that incredible? Yeshua said, as you go in fulfilling your responsibilities, I will go with you even to the ends of the earth and the end of the age. But he also said, as our Brit Chadashah text conclude in Revelation 22, yes, I'm coming soon. And our response should be, as it was there, so be it. Come soon, Lord Messiah. Take the next minute or so in time of quiet reflection and response, and hopefully that too will be your response to him tonight. As we reflect, and we should say, isn't that incredible?